Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, cPacket with Microsoft on Seamless Cloud Observability. Today, some of the topics we'll be covering include optimizing cloud deployments and powering hybrid cloud observability using Microsoft Azure Gateway Load Balancer and cPacket cCloud. At the end of the session, we'll take a few viewer questions. Also, one lucky viewer will win a drone. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Anavi and Ian. Each have a wealth of knowledge in networking and securities. This won't be a traditional webinar of me posing questions. Rather, I'll hand over the mantle to them, and they will riff and discuss the aforementioned topics. I'll join back in at the end to relay any viewer questions we get during the discussion. With that, Ian, take it away.
Thanks, Kedar. Thanks for joining everyone listening in today. Yeah, this is Ian Kenny. I am head of product at cPacket, so all things product are my fault or problem. And that's how life goes. I've spent a lot of years building equipment for networks, and it is great to be able to be here today. Anavi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I definitely relate to the being my problem aspect of what you just said, Ian. But hi, everyone. I'm Anavi Nahar. I lead the Azure Load Balancer and NAT Gateway product group. Super excited to be here. You'll have to forgive me. It's a little gloomy day in Seattle over here. So if you're not able to see me as clearly, you can just blame the Seattle weather. But I'm super excited to be here to tell you a little bit more about Gateway Load Balancer, which is really just service chaining in the cloud. But before we do that, I'd love to hear more about our integration and then a little bit more about cPacket too. So Ian, you want to tell us a little bit more about the solutions cPacket offers today for our collective customers?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Yeah, so obviously cPacket, we've been around for a while. You may have come across us in a lot of on-prem environments, maybe even your on-prem environment, depending on which company you're working with. But obviously cloud is clearly a huge area for many businesses, and that is good news for this webinar. The whole point is that certainly from cPacket's perspective, we are really kind of powering that hybrid cloud observability. That's really the kind of the idea. We want to help customers be able to visualize and get excited about your environment, to really know what's going on in there. We have a range of products which we'll look at later, kind of nodes as we call them, which are part of that story. But the idea is that we're trying to help customers have that common experience, whether they're doing things on-prem, maybe in a traditional kind of data center environment, actual pure hybrid kind of environments, or maybe you're a born-in-a-cloud customer that you're relatively new to this space. The point being is that you need to have that visibility, because I think we both agree, Anavi, that customers are getting huge value from deploying workloads in cloud. I mean, that's just what people are doing all day long. I meet with a lot of large Fortune 1000, Fortune 100 businesses, and people are really driving getting things running in the cloud, which is exciting for them, exciting for their customers, their end customers, as well as for us as a vendor. But the key thing that they're lacking, and I hear this again and again, is that visibility. They had a very distinct model, maybe in an on-prem environment or maybe a previous job that they were in, very, very comfortable with that. Now they've gone to the cloud. They've got that little bit of a gap, a few blind spots. And that's really what we're all about here. And that's why this partnership makes a lot of sense. Gartner recently were talking, and they said by 2023, which is coming up pretty quick, as I think we're all realizing, that 60% of enterprises will deem networking, that's my bread and butter for many years now, networking as core to their digital strategy. And obviously, if something is really kind of core to that strategy, that means, if you can't visualize it, if you don't understand exactly what's going on, if you can't get to the packets, things like that, that is really a huge miss. So that's really why we're here today. That's why it's great to be able to have yourself, Anavi, on this webinar, so we can talk about all the fun things. And I would definitely like to say it's not just service chaining in the cloud. I think you undersold a little bit there. I think there's a lot of good things to talk about gateway load balancer. So let's jump onto that. Tell us all about what that's about.
All right. Yeah, so Gateway Load Balancer is service training in the cloud, but I guess it's also enabling you seamless connectivity pretty much, right? So think about whether you're moving from on-premises or whether you have existing network virtual appliances that you use and you want to be able to integrate them into your deployments. Now, what we heard from customers is there was really a growing demand to protect workloads and really insert network virtual appliances in the path. So let's say you're going from a certain source to a certain destination. You want to have the visibility that you were mentioning, right? You want to have additional functionality such as packet brokering. You want to be able to leverage the plethora of hybrid solutions that you do have. Customers really want to be able to send all of the information to different tools, or whether that's just storage to analyze later for troubleshooting purposes. We're just seeing more and more of a need for customers to say, hey, I'm going from this source to this destination, and I want all of my traffic to go through an appliance. This appliance could be, their favorite appliance, a firewall, a visibility tool, observability tool, a monitoring tool, inline DDoS even. The applications are just endless. And so really with service training and gateway load balancer, what we're able to do is seamlessly put the NVA in the path when going from a certain source to a certain destination in that networking path, which to me, that's really the true power of being able to do it easily and seamlessly, but getting that rich data and that rich understanding that's very needed for debugging, for troubleshooting. And these are, complex workloads for sure. So that's what, hopefully I didn't undersell it there, but that's really all what I would mention that, Gateway Load Balancer really is for folks joining for the first time or hearing about it for the first time.
Okay, so some of those, you talked about the NVA, the Network Virtual Appliance, and I say as a guy who's built appliances and products for many years, trying to get those deployed in regular networks is a challenge. Obviously in the cloud, as you're saying, is kind of a little bit more. Can you just maybe kind of expand on a little bit of those challenges? Annavi, that'd be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. So stepping back a little bit, when we're building something in Azure, we're always looking at what our customers telling us, but then also what partners like you are telling us, right? We always want to be open to the challenges and the feedback together that our partners and customers are telling us. So along those lines, in the NVA space or the Network Virtual Appliance space, we found that customers were using 3 different models. The first model, as I called it, is the paired model that you're seeing on the slide. So this is just your regular pair of NVAs. So obviously that means limited throughput in this case. And if an instance goes down, your workload is pretty much down. And that's unacceptable always because the cloud really has to always be on. Your workloads always have to be on, right? So those are some of the challenges with the paired model. And also it's very hard to then deploy multiple of these sets of NVAs and hard to really replicate those at scale. The second model that we heard of, because of the limitations of the first one, is the dual LB model. In this model, what really happens is you have your public-facing load balancer and your internal load balancer, ILB, as I like to call it. Now, as you can already tell from the picture, and the picture is a simplified version of this complicated deployment, but as you can tell, it's already harder to set up. Troubleshooting is complex because now you're trying to figure out where the packets are. Did they go through from the entire source, through the load balancer, through the NVA, through the other load balancer, and so on and so forth. And of course, this is also bound to only a single virtual network, which at scale with large customers across regions, that's really a non-starter pretty much. Finally, there's also a class of customers that say, hey, you know what? I'm not happy with these 2 other models. I'm just going to go ahead and build it myself, or the DIY model, if you will. Of course, this requires expertise, right? People have teams and teams in order to set up, in order to build these scripts and these tools and maintain them and make sure there's no regressions or any changes that occur and that could compromise the deployment as a whole. Of course, that, like I said, comes at a cost. It's not the most efficient from that standpoint either. So these are broadly the three models that we were seeing and the set of challenges with all of these. And so really what we're trying to do with Gateway Load Balancer is to solve those challenges, right? And so our goal really overall with Gateway LB, which is now in public preview, is to take the functionality of a gateway, which is your single entry and exit point for traffic for your network, as well as that functionality of our software-defined networking stack that really powers our load balancer as a whole, right? So think through things like layer 4. That means there's no additional latency that will play effect in your end-to-end packet flow, as well as things like auto-scaling with VMSS. So you can scale out or scale down based on your need. Maybe you're a retailer and there's a heavy shopping season that's coming up, and so you expand, right? You're able to do that on the fly and super easily, all with auto-scale. There's also no packet changes, like I was saying, because we're that network load balancer. So there's no connections that are terminated. We're just passed through. So everything will go as is, or in this case, encapsulated with VXLAN over to that gateway load balancer backends, or NVAs as we call them. Of course, you have the regular benefits of health checks, right? You want to make sure instances are healthy and they are the ones receiving traffic as opposed to any unhealthy ones. What's really cool with Gateway Load Balancer, and maybe I can talk a little bit more about the benefits as well. So that's really what the capability is. You're able to inject an NVA seamlessly in the path. In this case that you're seeing on the picture, it's from unfiltered web traffic going to a customer's application or your application. And so you're hopping through this Gateway Load Balancer. So the bump in the wire technology, right? Hence service chaining. Really, that's what it's giving you. And the benefits of these are numerous, right? So one, I think the goal when we heard the feedback of the complex to set up and things like that, our goal really with this solution is to build something that's easy to set up, right? I think that's the key. You have, in the cloud, you have customers coming in from all different segments and all really walks of life, so to speak. So you have folks that are novice to networking or that are experts in networking. And so we want to be able to cater to all of our customers. And so the key here was making it intuitive and easy to set up. Literally, you can chain your gateway load balancer to a standard LB with a click of a button, right? And that's super powerful to me because what's happening under the covers is we're being able to do that VXLAN encapsulation. And if that means nothing to you, that's totally fine. But we're able to use all of that technology under the cover all through a click of a button. What I also appreciate about this is customers don't have to relearn things about their NVAs, right? Maybe your favorite NVA is cPacket, right? You don't have to relearn how cPacket works. You're able to just integrate it together. So it's natively offered in the cloud. There's no manual changes that need to be made, right? So you have your deployment, you have your application, you're all set to go. And in this case, what's super valuable is any traffic coming in from the internet will first hit your standard load balancer. But since that standard load balancer is chained, as we call it, or connected to the gateway load balancer, all your traffic that's unfiltered or untrusted, as we call it, will first go to your NVA. Your NVA could be doing monitoring, could be doing packet inspection, could be doing packet brokering. Really pick your favorite application that your appliance does. All of that magic happens before the traffic is then gone to the backend. Now, when you look at the picture intuitively, you want to think that, hey, this is going to have additional latency, or these hops are going to cost me in terms of latency. But because of the way our software-defined networking stack works, it's so at the core of what we do that you're not even going to notice it. It's the same infrastructure that powers public IPs in Azure. So when you're connecting to public IPs, you don't see that latency. It's barely even noticeable, which I think is super cool. One of the other challenges, if you remember, I talked through was being able to manage this across virtual networks, across Active Directory tenants, across subscriptions, across regions. And with Gateway Load Balancer, you can have that in different virtual networks, as I've shown, but they could be across different subscriptions, even across regions. We've really honed in on the fact that customers have large-scale deployments and they want it easy to manage. So those are all the benefits of Gateway Load Balancer, and hopefully that adds some more color about what the solution is overall. And really that's what we have released in public preview together with wonderful partners. etc. So hopefully that adds some color, Ian, on the solution overall.
No, that's great. I think that's very, very helpful indeed. We did try and put out a couple of words, or I said some words at the start that I think might be helpful to kind of define. So one of those was observability, to try and help kind of customers who are trying to deploy. Maybe they're kind of new to kind of deploying workloads inside Azure or any cloud environment, but obviously within Azure, to kind of what that really means. And I think for me the power is kind of trying to bring together a lot of the aspects of how we want to deploy applications and what we need to know when we deploy applications. And I think that, I was meeting with some senior network architects just the last week or so, and they were like, "Yeah, that's great. Logs are really great. Logs are really good. But we need more. We sometimes need those packets. We need to be able to have the whole story, and the metadata is fine, and those kind of issues." And I think with observability, what cPacket is trying to do is to try and help bring together to give you those additional insights all the way from the wire data or packet data, all the way up through the stack, through those log files, those traditional things that people can access for their applications. So you actually have the whole story, so that as you're deploying these applications at scale, because that's what it's about, cross-region, cross-availability zones, 24/7 operation, all of the things that you said. And the point being is that, people need to be able to confidently, I don't know if it's sleep at night, but whatever the phrase might be, they've got to be confident in their work.
I don't want to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you do have those challenges, or there's some kind of a gap, and you do want to be able to add some kind of knowledge to your environment, you need to start not only with the kind of the logs, not with the application, but you also need to be able to add the wire data in addition to the metadata and the analytics. So that's really where observability fits, certainly even in this picture. And deploying workloads at scale is really what Gateway Load Balancer really helps people to be able to do. What about hybrid? And have you got any kind of comments on hybrid and how you see that fitting into the overall scheme?
That's definitely a good question. And I feel like we've been talking about the cloud, and the cloud, I would say now has become a little bit more mainstream, so to speak, right? We see a bunch more customers not only embracing the cloud, but oftentimes only building in the cloud. But I would still say that we're not necessarily towards even the end of the journey. I feel like we're really at the start of the journey, with more and more organizations embracing it, because it's not easy to shift completely, like the lift and shift, as you call it, right? It sounds easy and it sounds great and it's a great term, but it does take time in order to do that. And I think these types of solutions are really going to cater not only to those that build in the cloud, but also those transitioning or who are at the start of the journey from hybrid into Azure overall. So I think one of the key kind of points of feedback that we also heard is that, hey, I use this on premises, I want to use this in Azure, right? And really with our partnerships such as this one, we want to enable customers to be able to do that through the Azure marketplace, right? So if they're using something on premises, we want to enable them to use that in the cloud. So that's kind of what we're seeing as customers move over to the cloud as part of their hybrid journey as well. One of the big things, though, I feel like is when moving from on-premises, where everything, you own everything, you have everything is kind of under your control, for lack of a better phrase here, but it's a little bit of a point of friction where customers are like, okay, we don't have to manage anything, or we don't have to see anything because, Azure will take care of it. And so that's where the continuous monitoring or the deep level insights, I really feel like, come into play, because it's kind of a learning curve, right? Where you're not doing all of the traditional management that you would. And since it's out of kind of outsource, so to speak, or Azure takes care of it, really. And so in that aspect, I've seen a lot of customers really saying, hey, like you were mentioning, I want, the packet information, I want the logs, and I want to be able to continuously monitor. or monitor even at a larger scale when there's an issue in order to troubleshoot and things like that. So that's what we're seeing on hybrid as well. Are you seeing that's similar towards maybe the monitoring space? Because I feel like you're really an expert in that area for sure.
No, absolutely. I think we see customers who are very keen to do continuous monitoring, and that's effectively what I'm going to kind of demonstrate a little bit of today, and in terms of how customers can get started very quickly with that. And obviously you have on-demand monitoring customers who have, the equivalent of, if it's an on-prem data center, it's almost a kind of a crash cart concept. They can kind of move it around inside the data center depending on how they want to evaluate particular problems that they're seeing. And obviously, there's a lot of technologies inside the cloud to be able to enable that. But today, I think certainly the continuous monitoring and how to best visualize the bits of the data that they want to be able to see, as well as in the event that there is some kind of a problem or a challenge or some kind of issue comes up, you actually have all of the data there live, and you can very quickly put your fingers on it without having to wait for it to happen again, so to speak. So I think there's a lot of exciting pieces that are going on. Shall I jump into that the demo part, Anna? Would that be good? Should we do that?
Let's hear more about it for sure.
Okay, let's give it a go. So I'll bring up the next picture. Hopefully this will come up. Yep, there we are. Look at that. So this is our view, taking effectively the same basic constructs that Anna was talking about, and trying to say that, well, we still get the same concept. It's the same bump in the wire. And the idea is that we are feeding, you can see that the words there on the left, kind of trying to simplify it. We have a product called cView. It's basically a packet broker. Even inside the cloud, it's a packet broker. And that works out extremely well. And that allows you to distribute the data, across N packet brokers, obviously easily to scale those out. And that can be sent to tools like our tools, so cStore as an example here, or maybe it could be to a partner tool. We have a kind of a lot of partnerships with NDR providers as an example. And the idea is that is another tool that needs the packet data to be able to operate, and we can basically spray out those packets N times to the different tool sets. And there could be many tools. That's why they're called tool rails often. There can be many tools appearing in that environment. And then you have things like cClear at the bottom there, just a way of visualizing all of that. And I'll show you a couple of examples of how that would look in just a minute. So the idea, you're still seeing the same web traffic kind of flowing in, kind of cruising past the application, going into in this case, NVA is the cPacket appliance, and the series of these stacked up. And then obviously that traffic can get sent back out to the application, allowing the customer to have 24/7 access to that application. And obviously in the event of any challenges, then we can deal with that as we go. So I think I'm going to try and be brave and share another screen here, and let's see what happens next. So if you just give me 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go. Let's see what happens, and hopefully it'll all come up. Let's give that a go.
And while you're sharing that, Ian, I think this is one of the big use cases that we see as well, right? I don't want to harp on the point, but I think it's really critical for customers as they move. They want to be able to see everything, especially in the large network. And so hopefully you'll show us exactly that.
Yes, we're not going to do a large network today. We're going to do my little demo network here. But yes, exactly. But the whole point is that's exactly the point, is that these diagrams are great for product folks like ourselves, but obviously out in the field, customers on the webinar today, they are trying to deal with things at scale. Maybe they're evaluating things at the moment. Maybe they've already gone live on a very multi-site, multi-region type deployment, and they're trying to look for a solution. And that's where companies like cPacket can come in and help. So this is my Azure kind of resource group in my Azure environment. Thanks very much to my colleagues for getting this up and going. And effectively, we've got two pieces here. We have the front-end load balancer, and obviously that's the thing that Annavi, you pointed out there, and that's the one that's connected to the public internet in this case. So therefore, this is just an example, but it just kind of tries to show how this is kind of set up. It's very easy to deploy. I have my public IP here, 52.142.48.121, for example. Rather simple kind of concept. But then where's that being pointed at? That's the idea of the service chaining. You know, the idea that this is actually pointing at effectively the front-end load balancer is pointing at the back-end pool. So this is going to 10, 20, 2, 4. So just a little example there. So let's jump in here a bit more. I've got my gateway load balancer deployed, nice and easily enabled here. This is all internal IPs. Once again, as Annavi pointed out, this is all very much within your environment. This isn't getting touched by the external internet. This is the idea of all the IPs are the same. You're not terminating any connections and things like that. So now you've got my my front-end configuration, but this is a private address, clearly. And where's this being sent to? This is now being sent to my back-end pool, which happens to be, in this case, my cView, which is running, which, as I say, is effectively a packet broker running here in the cloud. So this is really kind of a very kind of simple way of deploying all of this. And this is something that if you're interested in this technology, or you'd like to see this running in your environment, you know, please reach out. I think we're going to have an email address at the end, or some way of reaching out that you can get this set up in your demo environment or whatever it might be, so that you can explore it. We also have a couple of other machines here. We have an Nginx web server. Once again, that's representing my workload for today. As say, quite a simple deployment, and this is the whole point. I don't have the traffic generators obviously visible here in this environment, but we are passing traffic through this network. If we deploy it in your environment, we actually deploy the packet generators as well, so you can really try out what's going on. So let's have a look through these machines then, just real briefly. Appreciate time is marching on. This is my vastly complicated Nginx workload running here up in Azure. And then let's jump into my cView. This is, as I say, a packet broker concept. You can see some small amounts of data passing through this particular machine, and this is then sending out. This happens to be sending just to the C store, which we'll come to in a second, but obviously this could be sending out to a N set of different tools, depending on the rules that you've configured. You see here, this is the C stores. This is doing data capture. This is capturing full packets, or if you've chopped the packets down a bit, then it captures whatever it receives, and you can easily download. So if I have my Nginx workload here, very advanced, is passing data through the cView. It's hitting the C store. I can basically type in something like 20 seconds worth of download, and you'll see immediately that PCAP is available for anyone to be able to then dig in a little bit more, or to ask more questions of the data. And as I say, we don't need to go and generate that. It is all available on disk, and you just attach as much storage as you believe you need for your environment.
And that's really a game changer for troubleshooting. Sorry to interrupt, Ian, but that's really a game changer for troubleshooting, because I think we were talking earlier where a lot of customers always say, hey, give me the packet capture, right? They want to see exactly the packets. And so this really speaks to that point that you were mentioning.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And as I say, there's a lot of folks who are very, very keen to see that, or particularly when there is a problem, or maybe another partner, maybe a kind of a service provider providing different parts to the environment, wants to see, what went over the wire. And if we look inside that that PCAP, you can just bring this up, pop straight up on the screen. Here we are, all of the packets. And you can see here that we've obviously got VXLAN obviously running in here. And as you said, maybe folks aren't terribly familiar with that protocol, but that's obviously all part of being used inside the Azure environment. And you can then jump directly in here. You can see the IPs. You can see what the external IPs were, where it came from. There's a lot of good things here in these streams, and that data is immediately available, as you said. So let's jump over to cPacket.
Troubleshooting as well. But I think the C view, for me, that's the real bang for the buck here.
Perfect. So let's look at the cClear for a second. This is just a visualization platform. Folks may have different ways of expressing this. You may have enterprise tooling that you want to connect up. And obviously we have all of the APIs available to be able to do that. But as I say, obviously we like to talk about our own product today. So once again, you've got capture, you've got immediate capture. We only have one C store, but you could have 10 C stores. You can have many more. And the idea is you can then do capture. So maybe my PC or my application or whatever it might be is a problem. I can type in IPs. I can, pick packet filter kind of format, and I can just bash that in, and it will go through all of the different C stores and pull out all of those packets immediately. So once again, it's part of, as you were saying, Annavi, that idea of debugging and really kind of getting inside the application. And then obviously we have dashboarding. Clearly, this happens to be a Grafana instance that we run inside cClear, and I think got some lots of bad data here, just to show the pretty pictures. You see here lots of retransmissions, lots of SYN errors, no zero windows, interestingly enough, and you've got the response times getting a bit long. Clearly, you can set all of these up, and you can then just jump in further and try and start to dig in and investigate what's happening inside your environment. It's got just a couple of little workloads here. You've got retransmissions are up and SYN errors going up, etc. And you can keep digging down into these and get to where you might want to maybe focus in on downloading particular packets. And you can then, click on these, and you can then really see exactly what's going on. Well, this one here, so 3.5 going to 2.5 is all going fine, but obviously this one here is having a lot more retransmissions, so there's a lot, something else I should probably dig into on that 3.4 server. So the whole point being is that we're trying to take the picture that we are building up of this idea of an integrated platform where we're taking the gateway load balancer and using that in kind of that service chaining mode to attach our broker or capture device or visualization platform to allow that to be able to help customers, help you on this journey through the deployment of deploying these enterprise scale workloads in the cloud. Okay. Hopefully that stopped sharing. Hopefully we're now back to the normal picture.
Yep. Yep. We see you again. I think something that I also wanted to add that there's use cases for both inbound as well as outbound, right? And so being able to really see what's going on, not only in one direction, but really both directions. And I think that's really been a big ask from a lot of our customers that we're seeing, right? So of course, in this case, we're focusing on internet-facing traffic. So whether that's coming from the internet or going back to the internet or any public endpoint, really. And I think that's a key detail that I just wanted to hone in on a little bit more. So you could have traffic coming in from your untrusted or unfiltered source, coming into your standard load balancer, going to your cPacket backends or NVA backends, and then doing that in that kind of inbound. But then there's also being able to do that on the outbound flow. So let's say there's traffic coming in from your individual application. And so let's say in this case, you're starting from customer application 1, as you're seeing on the slides here, that needs to go outbound to the internet. In that case, what's happening is traffic is going to go through the gateway load balancer still, because you have, outbound rules connected or configured on your standard LB. So in this case, you get that bump in the wire in both directions, and we take care of the encapsulation, and then our amazing NVA providers take care of the decapsulation, enabling kind of that functionality to really be in the cloud in both directions. And I think that's really important, because you want to be able to see both sides. It has to be observable for all directions, really. And then that's really the key. So I think together, partnering with the expertise of what you do, with bringing the power and technology of the cloud and making it accessible, I think together the integrated solution is really what makes the story whole.
Completely couldn't agree with you more, Anavi. Thank you very much for all of those extra comments. I think that idea of the workloads that we're seeing customers deploying, and I'm sure you're seeing what customers deploying, is not, they don't fit necessarily into those neat and tidy diagrams that we all love so much, right? The point is customers do actually want things which are often more complicated. They've got unique demands, and the idea is, I think, leveraging a lot of the tools provided within Azure and adding in partner technologies such as cPacket. I know there are the partners are out there, and really trying to kind of help customers on this journey, whether they're doing day one deployments or whether they've been doing this for maybe years possibly, and they're growing that deployment. They're looking for different ways to do the rollout. I think that is I think that's all very helpful stuff. Okay, let's shall we jump back to maybe try and get a couple of questions answered? Would that be okay? Kedar, should we bring you back, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions that we received here was, is it easy to extend my existing Azure deployment to include Gateway Load Balancer?
Yeah, thanks, Kedar, for the question. So I think so stepping back a little bit, that's one of our, I guess, building principles, really. We want to make sure that there's no friction to adopt newer technologies or newer products. And so as a result, yes, today it's currently in public preview, as I mentioned, and then we're going to GA here shortly, just around the corner. Available across, regions, all Azure regions, through your favorite client, whether that's through the Azure portal, CLI, even Terraform. We're seeing that become more and more widely used. But all you would need to do is take your existing application, which hopefully is behind a load balancer for high availability, and just chain it to your Gateway LB. And your entire deployment that Ian was showing earlier from the Gateway Load Balancer and the NVA back end, that we have templates and things ready to go. So definitely reach out if that's of interest, for sure. But yes, ready to go today. In fact, you could try it out even now if you go to portal.azure.com. If you're really feeling that excited about it.
Right. Okay, great. So another question that we got that came in was, why would I need packets? Aren't logs enough for modern application deployments?
That's a great one. I think I'd kind of half answered that one earlier, but it is a really very important question. I think the point is that modern systems, either entirely cloud, as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure Anavi can chip in as well, but these applications are not silly applications like the one I showed, right? They're usually complicated. There's usually multiple layers. Maybe it's microservices. Maybe there's Kubernetes elements. There could be all kinds of different layers within those applications. And I think that the modern network admin or application admin or whatever the job title might be, I think the key thing that they need is multiple layers of information, all the way from the logs, right? Not disrespecting logs, they're very, very important. Metadata, either generated by our tools, such as the CStore family of products, or it might be actually all the way down to the individual packets, because eventually the truth is in the packets, and I think that if you bring together each of those aspects, it's not that logs are it, maybe they are for some issues, but actually really what you want to understand is where the packets have gone. I always think that a good example that I heard recently was that clearly if I'm getting flows or I'm looking at log entries, that's all good if the connection's actually established. But the packets are going to tell you why it didn't get established in the first place. If there's a gap there. So I think there's a lot to be said for packets, and obviously I'm a big believer in that, but as I say, it's not to disrespect logs, it's really to try and say that the full story is really critical there.
And I think that's exactly what we see into. So anytime there's a support case or something, the first thing that a customer always asks is, have you looked at the packet capture, or here's the packet capture, or could we do a packet capture? And I think that's especially important because when, like you said, when things are fine, you're not trying to look into, unless you're super interested into what the packets are saying and you're a networking SIN. But I assume most of the wild majority of folks are not. And so in that case, I think it's super important to be able to do that. And in fact, we have that as part of our training for a lot of our support folks as well, to be able to just make sure that when a customer asks for that, or to walk through it, or understand what's going on to that level. Because when things break, that's really when you need this, but you don't want to have it or start doing it only when it breaks, right? You want to be prepared for having that information so that you're not waiting when an issue occurs. You have that information available and you just need to parse through it or visualize it. Maybe using a lovely tool like cView or cClear. And I think,
if only we had one of those, Genevieve, eh? No, I think that's a fair point. That's a big advantage for continuous monitoring, really. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't get too far ahead. So, Kedar, do we have any other questions come in? A couple more, maybe?
Yeah, a couple more. One of the questions here is, will there be additional latency with all the traffic flows?
So I think that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Ian thought too.
Please. No. Please jump in.
I think in this case, so it's hard to say it because it's relative, right? As I was saying, our network load balancer, standard load balancer is layer 4. So this means that any traffic going through it, you're not going to see any additional latency, et cetera. But now when you put the gateway load balancer in the hop, so just frame of reference again, your traffic coming from the internet, instead of going to your application, it's going to go to your gateway load balancer, run, continuous monitoring or on-demand monitoring with your cPacket solutions, which are your NVA backends, and then back to the application. Now, in this case, there's going to be very minimal latency, but it's not going to be necessarily noticeable to your everyday applications, right? Because I think that the trade-off then is, in my opinion, worth it, and what we're seeing from customers as well. Because irrespective of this, whether you choose, gateway load balancer or whether you just add a pair of NVAs in the back end, you're going to see that additional latency, but it's not something that would, degrade your application's availability or slow it down significantly. It's going to be barely even noticeable, plus the value add that you get in exchange. So being able to have the troubleshooting and the continuous monitoring and the packet captures and the logs, I think is going to be super valuable. Ian, did you want to add something there?
I know I was just going to agree, to be honest, because I think that, every time the packet is sent somewhere else, there is a tiny bit of latency, but actually the value that you get is so significant that it kind of effectively outweighs that, unless you have an extremely kind of tight margins in terms of the application, and that doesn't sound like most applications running today. The point is the benefits of having the visibility or any NVA on the back end is really the benefit the customers get.
Agreed.
Awesome.
Okay.
Good stuff.
One more, Kedar, or are we all good?
No more questions there. For customers who want to get connected to see this demo concept, please reach out to us over at cPacket or email us at support@cpacketnetworks.com. We can help you get started and bring our technology to your demo employment so you can see it in action. Any final words, Ian, Anavi?
I would just like to say thanks very much for everyone participating. Thanks for the questions that people popped into the the chat. Hopefully we got to them all. If we didn't, feel free to reach out. We'd love to engage. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me wherever, and we can connect up there. It'd be great. And it just goes to say thanks very much, Anavi, for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for hosting and creating the session. There's also some links that I just put out for learning more about Gateway Load Balancer on the blog as well. I think it's super valuable to see this in action, so I hope that people will reach out at the support alias that Kedar mentioned as well. And I think the key here that I also wanted to just touch on is it's important to find the right solution for, or design or architecture for your deployment. So definitely reach out and we'd be happy to help and happy to hear feedback. Again, we're in public preview and we'll be going GA just shortly, or generally available if that's the term you're hearing for the first time as well.
All right, perfect. With that, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Ian and Anavi, for an awesome and engaging discussion. We hope you all enjoyed the webinar and learned something new. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
See y'all.